All right, strap in, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into UFOs, government secrets, and a guy whose claims have screwed up controversy for decades now, Bob Lazar. You might know him, you might not, but whether you're a diehard UFO enthusiast or just kind of curious about this stuff, stick around. This one's going to be interesting, especially because, got to be honest here, one of us is coming at this with a whole lot of skepticism, while the other, well, let's just say they're a bit more open to the idea of aliens out there.
Let's just say I like my facts solid. But hey, I'm always up for exploring new ideas, right?
That's the spirit. That's what these deep dives are all about. So Bob Lazar, this guy pops up in the late 80s, claiming he worked at Area 51, that super secretive place. And not just any job. He says he was reverse engineering alien spacecraft. He even described them, these disc-shaped craft. I gotta admit, even if you're totally skeptical, that image, it just grabs you, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely captured the public's imagination. And a big part of his story, the thing that really made people pay attention, was his description of this element 115.
Yeah.
Claimed it was the fuel source for these spacecraft, allowed them to mess with gravity and basically like bend space-time.
Yeah, that's the part that always got me. Sounds straight out of science fiction, right? Warp speed and all that. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Lazar was talking about element 115 way before scientists actually discovered it.
And that's the heart of it, right? Element 115, or moscovium, its official name, wasn't actually made in a lab until 2003, years after Lazar went public with this whole thing. And to be clear, the real moscovium is incredibly unstable. It decays super fast, wouldn't last long enough to power anything, let alone some spaceship that can bend space-time, like he said.
Okay, so that's kind of a big problem for anyone leaning towards believing Lazar. But wait, there's more. His story is all tangled up with Area 51, a place that's basically become the poster child for government secrecy and alien conspiracies in pop culture, right? Can't think of Area 51 without thinking Bob Lazar, can you?
His claims, they definitely solidified Area 51's place in our minds. He gave a face, a story to the mystery that was already hanging around that place. And that's powerful, tapping into our fascination with the unknown, the possibility of something more out there.
It's like he gave us the blueprint for how we imagine aliens, right? But let's get back to Lazar himself. He's been called everything from a visionary to a total fake. Some people say he's like a disinformation agent putting out false info on purpose. Others say maybe he misunderstood something he saw or was purposely given bad information. There's a lot to unpack here.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. This guy's story has divided people for decades. Some people point to how consistent his claims have been over time, the fact that he didn't seem to make any money off of this, even went through some tough times because of it. He didn't write a best-selling book or anything.
Wait, so he didn't get rich off this whole alien spaceship thing?
Yeah.
That's actually surprising. I kind of always figured, okay, that is interesting.
Yeah, it is. But then again, there's the fact that there's no real evidence to back up his claims. And there are these inconsistencies in his background that people have pointed out, which makes it all even more confusing.
It really makes you think. But you know what's kind of wild? Whether or not his claims are true, Bob Lazar's story totally left its mark on pop culture,
Totally. Documentaries, books, you name it, he's been featured. And let's be real, some of the most iconic alien and spaceship images in movies, you can trace that right back to Lazar's description. It's true. He gave this super vivid, detailed account of, alien tech that, even if it's made up, it totally captured our imagination. It's been influencing how we picture this stuff ever since. Think about it. Before Lazar, did anyone really picture those sleek, disc-shaped spaceships with all the glowing lights and gravity-defying stuff?
Okay, you got a point there. It's like he gave us the visual language for aliens and UFOs.
Yeah.
Pretty fascinating how one guy's story could have such a big impact, especially considering how controversial it is. But let's be real, it all comes back to something much bigger, right? This deep human fascination with the unknown, with the possibility of life beyond Earth.
Totally. It goes straight to the core of those big questions we all have, right? Are we alone in the universe?
Right.
What if there are these super advanced civilizations out there that have figured out tech we can't even dream of? These are the kind of questions that have, haunted humanity forever. And the Tsar story, whether it's true or not, it brings those questions right to the front of our minds.
It's like he gave a face, a voice to those questions, even if he didn't mean to. But for me, the really crazy part is the implication that if any of what Lazar said is true, it means we're not just talking about aliens existing somewhere way out there in space. It means they've been visiting us, checking us out, maybe even messing with us for who knows how long. That's pretty mind-blowing, right?
Definitely challenges how we see ourselves in the universe, that's for sure. That's why we're still talking about Lazar's story after all these years. Makes us deal with some uncomfortable possibilities, question what we think we know about science, tech, and even like the nature of reality itself.
And maybe, just maybe, that's the whole point of a story like this. Even if it's totally made up,
Yeah.
it pushes us to think outside the box, consider different explanations, and just admit that there might be things happening in the world that are way stranger and more complicated than we can understand right now.
You got it. It's about finding that balance between skepticism and open-mindedness. We shouldn't just believe everything we hear, but we also shouldn't dismiss something just because it sounds impossible or challenges what we currently think.
You're right. It's like walking this tightrope between being too gullible and being totally closed off to new ideas.
Exactly.
Mm.
And in a world where misinformation and all that is everywhere, being able to think critically and look at information from different angles, that's more important than ever.
So even if Lazar was straight up lying or if he totally misunderstood what he saw, there's still something we can learn from his story. It's a reminder to stay curious, question everything, and be careful about what we choose to believe, right?
Absolutely. It's about keeping that healthy skepticism, but not losing that sense of wonder and curiosity about the world. Bob Lazar, his story is like the perfect example of how one person's claims can start a conversation around the world, make us question what we think we know, and leave us with more questions than answers.
Okay, yeah, that's a great way to put it. So we've gone over Lazar's claims, the controversy, how it affected pop culture, even the big philosophical questions it brings up. But we're still left with this, like, nagging feeling that there might be more to it.
Yeah, we dug deep,
Hmm.
but the core of the mystery is still kind of out of reach. Some people say that even if he wasn't telling the whole truth, maybe Lazar stumbled onto something real. Like maybe he experienced something but got it wrong, or was purposely misled.
It's like you're trying to put together this puzzle where some of the pieces are missing and others might be from a totally different puzzle. You're never really sure what the full picture looks like, and that's frustrating, but it's also, like, really intriguing, you know?
Exactly. Or what if Lazar was part of some kind of disinformation thing, like they fed him a fake story to take attention away from something even more top secret? Governments do that kind of thing. Adds a whole other layer to it all, doesn't it?
Whoa, now we're getting into conspiracy theories. That's a whole other thing we could talk about for hours. But it brings up an interesting question. If someone wanted to make up a lie about alien tech that people would believe, wouldn't they come up with something so crazy that it couldn't be disproven? Like, why element 115? Why not go even further?
That's a great point. Maybe they picked element 115 on purpose. Like, it was a calculated risk to make the story believable, but also make it hard to prove or disprove at the time. Like planting a seed of doubt that can grow in our minds, because we're all so fascinated with the unknown.
Okay, now you're really getting me thinking. So even after going this deep, looking at the evidence, exploring different points of view, we're still left with this sense of wonder and uncertainty. It's like we've only scratched the surface of something much bigger.
And that's what exploration is all about, right? We start looking for answers, but often the journey just gives us more questions. It's about being okay with the unknown, knowing that what we understand now is limited, and realizing that finding the truth is an ongoing thing.
So where do we go from here? We went down the rabbit hole with Bob Lazar, Area 51, this whole element 115 puzzle. We saw the contradictions, the intrigue, and how his story really shaped how we picture alien tech.
We looked at the science, the claims, the cultural impact, and I think that basic human desire to believe in something bigger than ourselves.
And what really sticks with you after all this, for me, it's how much Lazar's story still resonates, you know? Believe him or not, it taps into that age-old question. Are we alone in the universe? It's like you look up at the night sky and you just got to wonder what's out there.
It's that wonder that pushes us to explore, to ask questions, to push the limits of what we know. And Lazar, he kind of gave a face, a voice to that yearning. Gave us a story, something for our imagination to play with.
He gave us a picture of what alien tech could be, even if it's all just speculation. And that image, it stays with you, fuels that curiosity, makes you question what's really possible.
It's like he planted the seed of doubt, right? A seed that says, what if everything we think we know is wrong? What if there's way more to reality than we can see?
And that takes us back to the big question of this whole deep dive. We looked at the evidence, weighed it all out, but the answer, it's still kind of out there. Do we write Lazar off as a fake? Or do we consider the possibility that he stumbled onto something incredible, even if he couldn't fully understand it or explain it?
That's the big one, isn't it? And maybe there isn't a clear answer. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. A mix of real experience, misunderstanding, and maybe even some intentional messing around.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Bob Lazar, I have one last thought, and it's kind of a weird one. If Lazar was lying, like a lot of people think, why make such specific technical claims about element 115? Why not just make up something totally crazy, something science couldn't disprove easily?
Interesting point. Maybe they picked element 115 for a reason, to make it seem believable, but also hard to check back then.
It's like leaving clues, just enough to make people curious and get them talking, but never showing the whole picture. Truth or not, Bob Lazar's story reminds us to stay curious, to question everything, and to embrace the mystery that's all around us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring the unknown.